لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our study of the book معالم الطريق في طلب العلم of Sheikh Sadhan حفظه الله تعالى. We stopped last week in the discussion about reading and books and etiquette in relation to that, to which the Shaykh moves on to the next chapter, which has to do with طلب العلم itself, the actual seeking of knowledge, in which the chapter has two important issues for the student of knowledge. And here he's going to discuss to us how we go about seeking knowledge and the prioritization of the books and the materials. So he says, the قضية الأولى, the first issue, الأولويات في طلب. There must be a prioritization, an order in which a person will seek his knowledge. He says, undoubtedly, many of the students, right, they have zeal, which is essential for learning, but it can also falter, diminish, or even disappear. And if a student follows the wrong path, especially. So if the student knows that the right way and how to be guided in that, they will reap many rewards. And some students of knowledge err by burdening themselves beyond their ability and capacity, attempting to achieve great results in a short time. If these results are not achieved, they will experience adverse effects on their pursuit of knowledge. For those reasons, our pious predecessors laid down clear guidelines as the beginning of their path of knowledge. And whoever follows them will succeed, while whoever rushes things before their due time be punished by being deprived of them. And how many students of knowledge were seen in study circles, halaqat, crowding with other students, only to begin to change after a short time, and then abandon the pursuit of knowledge altogether. And the reason for that is that they embarked on a path they could not traverse without things that they still lacked. And here are some examples. And here the Shaykh is emphasizing this, that knowing the path, we said, is one way. One of the first things you have to know how to seek the knowledge. And the second thing is the order in which you're going to seek it. Because knowledge is vast. It's an ocean without any shores. So if someone is studying and they're studying everything at once, or they study advanced things when they're beginners, then they're going to overburden themselves and they're going to give up. Not to mention, as he said, trying to achieve many goals or high capacity in a short time. And some people, they're able to. We mentioned the story of Qadir, rahimahullah. But most people, it takes time. So therefore, we have to have patience, sabr, ala talab ilm. And you have to have realistic expectations. And as long as you're in the talab, as long as you're seeking knowledge, فَأَنْتَ طَالِبُ ilm, you're a student of knowledge. So the problem they have is today people want to become something quickly, but they forget the point. What was the benefit? It's a tariq al-jannah. So if you go there faster, with the ilm, it means you do more da'wah and khair. There's no retirement. Right? The idea that I finished, now I'm done. So this is the secular way of studying. You graduate and khalas, you put your shahada or your diploma on the wall and you go to sleep. Here, you're going to keep learning. So the point is, we don't need to rush. Rather, we have to focus on what we're learning from. Example now. Abu Ja'far reports, rahimahullah, I entered upon Abu Abdullah, Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, and I asked him, should I perform wudu using water mixed with lime? And he said, I don't like that. And he said, should I perform wudu with water mixed with a certain type of bean? And he said, I don't like that. And he said, should I make wudu using water mixed with rose water? And he said, I don't like that. So then I stood up and he grabbed hold of my garment and he asked me, what do you say when you enter the masjid? He said, I replied, I remained silent. He then said, Ya Muhammad, and what do you say when you leave the masjid? He said, and then the narrator said, I remained silent. So he said, go learn this first. So here, this narration, Shaykh Sadhan says, this man began his path by asking about matters that might be considered rare. And he neglected what is more common and more important than that. And this story is mentioned in Tabaqat and Hanabil and Siyar A'lam al-Nubala of Imam al-Dhahabi. And the benefit is clear. Someone's asking about these issues, and he doesn't know how to enter the masjid, exit the masjid, the du'as. So we know, learn the adhkar and du'as is the first step. But if someone now is asking about these details about wudu, even though wudu is a basic topic, he's got to start in order. Otherwise, he wouldn't end up like this. A second benefit we can take from this is somebody who's learning. If he learns masail all over the place without qawa'id and dawabit, he'll end up like this. For example, someone learns, you make wudu with water. And you're not allowed to make wudu with what is not water. And if there's no water, then you do tayammum. Okay, now if something mixes with water, we already studied. If it's called water, you can use it. If it's no longer called water, you don't use it. So you learn a principle, so therefore you can, all the juz'iyat, all the particular issues that come in your life, you can answer them. But this man asked how many questions? Lime, bean, rose. These are all just get a qa'idah, move. But he doesn't know the qa'idah, so he's also not able to get the answer. And Imam Ahmad reported in Daraqutni in his Sunan that he says, قال عن أبي يعني قال عبد الله بن أحمد قال أبي, my father said, محمد كل شيء تحول عن اسم الماء لا يعجبني أن يتوضأ به ويتيمم أحب إلي من أن يتوضأ بالنبيذ. So Imam Ahmad told his son, anything which changes its name from water into something else means you cannot call it water anymore. That I don't like it means you should not make wudu with it, rather you do tayammum. And therefore you should make wudu with nabidh, which is a fermented juice. That's a qa'idah. That's what Imam Ahmad taught his students. But the questioner is asking without the principle. So that's another thing that if you learn like this, every day you have a question on the same topic you ask 50 times because you didn't study it properly. Not to mention if someone is asking rare questions and they don't know the basics of their deen, then also the Shaykh mentioned this is a mistake. So we have to avoid that. And he mentioned another incident to highlight this point. One day a man who was considered honorable with a long beard came to Al-A'mash rahimahullah in his gathering and asked him a simple question about the salah. So the narrative said, A'mash turned to us and said, look at him. His beard can hold the weight of 4,000 hadith, yet his question is like that of a child. I couldn't have sabiyah al-kutab yani. That means the kids in the madrasa. There's a question he's asking. Look at his beard. It's supposed to be like a mufti. So these kinds of things are also reality. That if somebody is seeking knowledge, they should know the priority. Study the salah, study the aqeedah, study the basics before you get into other topics. But also some in the salaf, like A'mash was really strict, and that was his character as well, but also showing the etiquette of knowledge. You can't expect yourself, the older you get, you should know more, but also make sure you study in order so you don't end up like this. So Shaykh says, this man dwelled into one matter and neglected what was more important. And this is something which students are to be criticized for. Ibn Jurayj entered upon Ata ibn as-Sa'ib's gathering and as a beginner of seeking knowledge. And Abu Umayr, one of the Imams, was present. So he asked him, have you read the whole Quran? Yani memorized it? He said, no. He said, go and read it and then seek knowledge. So I went, Ibn Jurayj said, spent some time reading the Quran, yani memorized it. I came back to Ata and Abdullah was with him. He asked me, have you read now and learned the obligatory prayers? I said, no. He said, go learn it. So then seek knowledge. So I went, I learned about them, I came back, and then he said to me, now you can seek knowledge. So then I stayed with Ata for 17 years. And this is found in Siyar Anam al-Wala, Imam Dhahabi. And so you can see here that this is the etiquette of the Salaf before. Order. Because for them, Talab al-Hadith was considered the highest stage. So first you do your basics. Obviously they were growing up as Muslims at the time of Salaf, so they know their basic Aqidah, then they know how to read and write, then they know the Quran, then they learn Fara'id, inheritance, then they go Talab al-Hadith. And the reason why this is interesting is because this is how the Salaf would go about it. No wonder that those who came at the final stage, 17 years. Why? Because he started properly. He didn't just come to the Hadith class, he doesn't know anything. So you see, look at the outcome. He stayed that long because all the effort and also sabr. He tested him. You know this? No. So let's go see, you're going to learn or not. Because if you're not willing to learn the basics, how are you going to learn the advanced things? If you have no sabr to learn the Quran, for example, or any of the basics of the Salah, are you going to learn the intricate knowledge? And that's sometimes what happens. Sometimes some people, when they're learning, they say, oh, this is so beginner, I wish I can go higher. But if you can't be patient, the beginner stuff, how are you going to be patient, the higher stuff? And so it's almost like those people who say, we need something more. When it's more, they leave the class. You're the one who's saying the class is too easy. When it gets harder, you're not there anymore. Why? Because the easy one, you're supposed to make perfection of it, understand it, and build your stamina for the things that are more advanced. So just like we know in regular school, right? You go through all those years, finally you go to university, college, whatever you're studying. But if sometimes we notice that this part, we have to be very mindful of it. Imam Wahab, he says, Ibn Wahab, I came to Malik ibn Anas rahimahullah and asked him, what do you say about ilm? He said, it is good and beautiful, but consider what's incumbent upon you for your morning until night and adhere to that. And he says, therefore, some of the students, when they are reminded of certain matters, they perceive that you're belittling them, but really you're not. This is from shaitan entering upon them. It is not shameful for some students of knowledge to be ignorant of matters they encounter 5 days or 5 times a day. So what is Imam Malik rahimahullah telling him there? That ilm, you start off what you need for your day and your night. Ilm wajib, and we said it for this fard aini knowledge, individual obligation knowledge. What is that? Whatever you need every 24 hours. So that's the knowledge you have to know. There's no excuse. If you don't know it, you're liable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what does everyone need every day of their life, 24 hours? Good aqeedah, wudu and tahara, right? And salah. And if it's Ramadan, then he goes from there. But that's it, at least those. So that's your curriculum right there. Good aqeedah, how to make wudu, and every day connect to tahara too, right? Not just the wudu. What about ghusl? What about the tayammum? And then your salah. And so the Shaykh is going to give us a list of books, but you can see that's the order the ulama always mentioned. Another way to remember 5 pillars of Islam. Shahada first, right? And connect to that 6 pillars of Iman. And then you go to salah next. That's it. So some people when they're studying, you see them, mashallah, they're at the end of the book of the fiqh. They're in the nawazil, they're in the mashallah issues, we don't know what they're doing there. And you ask them, why not the beginning? Because again, like today, is it about learning, or you're looking for hype, or you're looking for, shuhra or something, like, I know these rulings about judgments and stuff. So we have to be mindful. Malik's advice is very beautiful. ولكن انظر look إلى الذي يلزمك من حين تصبح إلى حين تمسي فالزمه. Look to that which you need every day you wake up and you reach the evening, and stick to that. So based on these 2 points, now the Shaykh is going to give us a curriculum, right? Set of books and materials you should begin with. And this is his advice. And every Shaykh has his own advice. So when we study Shaykh Bakr Abu Zayd Rahimullah's book, Hilat Talib Ilm, he mentioned his own set. And if you read another book, they have their own. Every Shaykh has his recommended books. So there's no problem, there's no harm, right? If you can choose them, if they're all beneficial, they're all wasa'il. So the Shaykh says, now I'm going to recommend the following books for the beginner in seeking knowledge. Number 1, he says, Zad al-Muslim al-Yawmi, the Muslim's daily provisions by Shaykh Abdullah ibn Jarallah, rahimahullah. One of the well-known shuyukh in Saudi, rahimahullah, passed away. He was very active in da'wah and khair. So this book he wrote, in it what the person would need as a beginner. So it's called Zad al-Muslim al-Yawmi. So what you need for your adhkar, your basic, your salah, the basic, so all that kind of basic stuff. So that's a really the beginner book, he says, and it's good due to the impact it has on the person's soul and the remembrance on the soul, the remembrance of the khair on the person. And also we know that there's books like this which are considered like a general book, right? So another alternative to this is like Shaykh bin Baz Rahimullah's book, which is Durus al-Muhimma li'amat ummah. That's another example. The beginning, right? Durus al-Muhimma li'amat ummah. We studied it before. It's a very good book. Even non-Muslim, they can start with that book. Just a list of everything I need. So the important lessons for the ummah, right? So the Muslims they need. Then he says number 2, which is the 40 Hadith of An-Nawawi, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, the 40 Hadith of An-Nawawi, and this book contains 42 Hadiths related to beliefs and acts of worship, and they're authentic Hadiths, and that's well known, right? Most of us know it. It's a good book, right? And this is a book everybody probably has, or many of us have memorized. And the 40 Hadith, what is it for? To teach you the 40 basics Hadith that encompass the whole deen. So each one of those Hadith teach you part of the deen. That's why it's special. It's not just 40 Hadith about ahkam or aqeedah. It's about the whole deen. So when you read it with the commentary, it's very beneficial because you learn about the whole of Islam in one book. For example, you learn about your niyyah, you learn about things about leaving off bad things which are not beneficial to you. You learn about how to get closer to Allah. You learn about Qadr, everything. And so it depends on what explanation you use. People say, what explanation? Any explanation you want to use of the shuyukh is acceptable and beneficial, right? You should pick what's easy for you. But some explanations are more detailed than others. So we know that the 40 Hadith plus the addition to make it 50 half in Rajab, this is the best. But for many of us, it's too much. Right? Because that book is a mawsu'a, it's an encyclopedia of benefit. But if someone will say, how about, for example, Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, or if you want really good benefits and nice reminders or things to do with the deen, Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, he has a really good one too, Arba'in Nawawi. So these books, you read them. Some of them you read different ones, but pick a one that's easy for you and benefit. But what you learn there, you learn everything you need to know about the basics of the deen. So a Muslim will say, at least I know about Islam generally, and I know some of the hadith everyone should know. And then he says, number 3, Kitab al-Tawheed. Right, no doubt, Shaykh Islam Abdul Wahab. And he says to Shaykh, this book, you read it with the hashiyah, the notes, and the glossary of Shaykh Ibn Qasim, rahimahullah, right, one of the contemporaries, the older, right, as Najdi scholar, rahimahullah. Hashiyah Ibn Qasim ala Kitab al-Tawheed, one of the best shuruh. And the Shaykh says here, why? He says, this book has been extensively served. I mean, all the ulama have dealt with Kitab al-Tawheed, but he said this book, Ibn Qasim's notes, is perhaps amongst the best commentaries in the book, especially since Ibn Qasim adopted a concise yet comprehensive approach including all the appropriate valuable insights and quotations or fawaid you need. And this is not only his statement. Shaykh Salah Sindi says the same thing. From the best beginner books on Kitab al-Tawheed, and one of the most comprehensive because it teaches you about Tawheed and the rules, like in terms of what is shirk, what is not. Hashi ibn Qasim. You read it for yourself, you see. It's not very long, but if you look at it, the way he explains it, mashallah, very nice. And who is Ibn Qasim again? He is the Shaykh who compiled the Majmu' Fatwa ibn Taymiyyah. Right? So this is, Shaykh Abdul Qasim's father, if I remember correctly. So this is a good book. It's very nice. So if someone prefers that. And it's short. It's very short. So you don't have to worry. Again, he's talking about beginner. Right? We're not talking about bigger ones. But he says if you want a bigger one, his teacher, Shaykh Abdullah bin Jarullah, he has a big book on this, like a bigger book. It's called Jam' al-Farid. And in there, it's a Q&A. So he takes the same book, Kitab Tawheed, and he puts in Q&A. And it's good for people, he said, to remember the topics if you want to review and you want to put into your heart, right, the issues you're studying. And he says the reason is that some students of knowledge find it easy to read questions and answers than to read them in a more disjoint manner. And this is true. Su'al and Jawab is one of the ways Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught. So why? Questions and answers focuses you to learn. Because someone asks you a question, you want to know the answer. So the question, okay, I have to get the answer. And when you memorize the question and answer, then you can teach other people. So it's kind of like 2 in 1. You learned it yourself, now he's like, hey, I want to go and share it. So that's a beneficial way to do it. So this is a good book as well, if you wish to read that. Then he says, number 4, Kitab al-Aqidah al-Wasatiyya, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, with the commentary of Shaykh Salih Fawzan, may Allah preserve him, who was the recent Mufti of Saudi Arabia, many of us have heard. So Shaykh Fawzan's book, he says, the commentary is concise, it contains many benefits, and is distinguished by the ease in the language. Right? And the book is in a good print, right? It's well distributed and circulated, widely circulated. So that's good, because Shaykh Fawzan's books, all his books are easy to read. Right? And he's made on purpose that way to make very simple but clear cut. And the Shaykh has advanced books too, but this is very good because if you read a simple book, at least you understand the topic. And if you want to get into more advanced, you can go to a bigger book. But some students, they ask, okay, which sharh? The better question is, what level are you in? If you want an in-depth one, you want I want to just know the basics of each part, then you read something that Shaykh Fawzan's book is going to give you pure aqidah, simple, clear, and you will understand and enjoy it. If you're a little more advanced, you can go to a bigger sharh. Shaykh Uthaymin, for example, 2 volumes. But some people, when they see 2 volumes, they're like, oh, subhanAllah, because Wasli is very small. So you help yourself, read the Fawzan one, complete it. And Shaykh Uthaymin has 2 sharh, Mukhtasar, a small one and a big one. The small one was like for the students in the high school, like they made as a muqarrar, then he has the bigger one. So if you read the small one, you build. Some people, they're ambitious. When you see 2 volumes, right, you say, okay, subhanAllah, maybe I should first finish at least one time. But Shaykh Uthaymin, the ulama usually say in our time, is one of the best explanations. For example, Shaykh Muqbil, rahimahullah, when he talked about that, he said, I never seen a book like that. When I read it, I was amazed about Shaykh Uthaymin, Sharh al-Wasatiyya. So imagine that. If you're getting recommendations, Shaykh Muqbil, that means it's a really good book. Because again, some of the ulama, when they read each other's books, we say that book is fantastic in terms of its benefit, and its wide benefit. So many of us, we know it's in English 2 volume, but Fawzan's also, Shaykh Fawzan's Sharh is also English, alhamdulillah. Number 5 and 6, he says, Kitab Sifl Salah, An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, li Shaykhayn al-Imamayn, the 2 Imams of our time, Samahatu Shaykh Abdul bin Baz, rahimahullah, wa Fadil Shaykh Nasiruddin al-Albani, rahimahullah. So 2 books, both on the prayers, and the prayers, description of the prayer. Number 1, Shaykh bin Baz, he has Sifl Salah. And also Imam al-Albani, most of us will know that he has the Prophet's prayer described, Sifl Salah. In fact, all 4 Imams have it. Shaykh Uthaymin has Sifl Salah, and Shaykh Muqbil also. So all of them have it. And there's slight differences here and there in some of the views, but most of it is the same. So he says you read this. And what is you reading here? You're reading Sifatu Salah. So we have to make a point here. Salah is of groups and categories. When it comes to Salah, there's a description of the prayer, but that doesn't mean you know the prayer. You want to know the mechanics. So the beginner, it's a good question. Should he know how to pray or should he know all about the prayer? So some ulama, they mention, well, you have to know the conditions, the pillars and nullifiers too. So the question would be then, if you read Sifl Salah, you know how to pray, but you don't know what breaks your wudu necessarily or breaks Salah necessarily. So therefore, some ulama, they mention if you read Shaykh al-Albani's book, Talkhis, Sifl Salah. So Shaykh al-Albani has 3 versions of Sifl Salah, 3 of them. They're small, so the big one, the original one's called Asr, Sifl Salah. More than 1,000 pages. That was the original book he finished. Of course, and after that he realized it's way too big, right? So people are subhanAllah, this. In that book you see Shaykh al-Albani's fiqh. People say he's not a faqih, read that book. You're going to see, we're going to find out who's a faqih, right? He's a faqih and muhaddith at the same time. Read that, see yourself. He's well acquainted with the fuqaha, he knows. But in there you see amazing benefits. But it's big. So he made the regular one that many of us know. It's Sifat Salah, they've been there many prints. And even that one got too big. And some of the students kept asking him, Muqaddimah, a new or a smaller one, they kept asking him, it's too big, Shaykh, for the people. Because in there he has the beautiful introduction and all the footnotes. So he wrote Talkhis, abridged. And in the Talkhis, he tells you what's wajib and what's rukn, pillar, and which is, these things. He puts all the points. So that's why it's good to start with that one. So the recommendation, Talkhis, Sifat Salah, I believe Al-Fajr, he went over it, so you can benefit from that. And the ulama have also explained that, like Sulayman Ruhaili and others. So you go, good to go from there. But if you want to get both, I would say Talkhis is very good. But a benefit, Salah, as we studied before, Salah has elements. So if you want to know if you know the Salah, there are 6 things in Salah connected to Salah. Number 1, shurut, conditions. So you have to know the conditions of Salah. Number 2, arkan, the pillars of Salah. Number 3, obligations, wajibat, the obligations of Salah. So we have conditions, pillars, obligations. Number 4, sifat Salah, description. Why? Because you have to know all the things to do beforehand, what you have to end it, and then how to do it. Number 5, sunan of Salah. What is considered sunnah? So if something's not a pillar and obligation, it's a sunnah. Means if the Rasul did it. And then number 6, nullifiers, nawaqid Salah. And then there's another one you can add to, which is mubahat, what's permissible, but that's not necessary here. So these 6. So if someone studies Sifat Salah, he only knows how to pray, the description, but he needs to know the other parts too. Why? Because if someone prayed, he prays with sunnah, but he made mistakes. Sujood sahw. It's connected to pillars and the obligation. But if you know how to pray, but you don't know the rest, some pools, you're going to be praying but not praying because you're going to break your salah. So that's why it's important to read the commentary. I would say like either listen to the audios of Fajr to Talkhis or read the book, at least you get the benefit of it. طيب, and also again the other books they mentioned as well, you can read as well, Sheikh bin Baz and a lot of others. He mentioned on top of that he says here also there's a kitab, Sifatul Wudu Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which is written by contemporary Sheikh. It's also very good. It's in English, called the Description of the Prophet's Wudu. Description of the Prophet's Wudu. There's more than one book like that. Fahad al-Shawaib. And so this is also in English. That's also very good. Teaches you the description of the Prophet's Wudu according to the Sunnah. So that's very good as well to know. And it says in there, the author compiled the description of the Prophet's ablution from the various books of Sunnah, and then he presented in an organized manner, making it easy for students now to apply it practically. And the book is generally very beneficial, and I mentioned it because some people perform wudu in ways that contradict the Sunnah in many aspects. And this is a reality. So student knowledge, you have to know how to make wudu, but also how to correct people's wudu. Because when you go to the wudu room, you're going to see for yourself. And this is one of the realities. We have to admit that as a community, people, just because they're older doesn't mean they know what's right and wrong. So our job is that we have to know the basics so we can teach the people also what they need. Example, he says, look at this great benefit. From the anecdotes mentioned by Ibn Imad al-Hanbali in Sadrat al-Dhahab, he says that Ibn Hajar stated, a scholar was known as Sheikh of the ablution places. Sheikh al-Matahir, the Matahir, the places where you make wudu. And he says this Sheikh, he was known for this because he used to stand at the amakin al-wudu, the places people make wudu, and he used to watch the people make wudu and correct their wudu. So they gave him the nickname Sheikh of the wudu places. See that? You can become the mufti of the wudu place. Come on, this is good. We need that. Today, you'll be shocked how many places you go wudu rooms, there's ikhtilaf going on there. Someone's doing masah, someone's debating, and you have to come in and solve it. But if you walk in and say, I don't either, I'm serious, I've seen it myself sometimes. You wonder, subhanAllah, in those places, people making wudu, but at the same time, you have to know the knowledge because they're going to ask you. So that's why it's good to see this. But also the benefit of da'wah, that even sometimes da'wah, what we imagine of it, it doesn't always have to be behind the microphone. Someone could be in the wudu room. Some ulama used to sit down after Fajr or after, before Jum'ah Salah or after Jum'ah, correcting people's Fatiha all day. Imagine the awam, especially, who's going to teach them, right? So this is also a great benefit to encourage us for da'wah. And this is mentioned in the Kitab Sadrat al-Dhahab, volume 6, page 357. So that's a good benefit. He says that, and also the next point the Shaykh mentions, number 7, which is the Riyadh al-Salihin, by Imam an-Nawawi rahimahullah. And this is one that some people only became familiar with it after the afternoon prayers, right? And after the Asr Salah, because people, right, they usually read it, some Imams after Salah for the people. And in truth, it's a book that contains many benefits, especially one who reads it contemporary, right? A commentary, with it. And there's several commentaries, right? The lengthy one is called Dalil al-Farihin, Ibn Allan. So that's a big one. And some ulama, they say it's the best one in terms of the fawaid. It's called Dalil al-Farihin, Ibn Allan. And that one, he brings a lot of benefits, but it's detailed, right? In some angles, in some parts, it's more fiqh oriented. And then he says others as well. He mentioned about contemporary scholars, Nusrat al-Muttaqeen. And he says, finally, the commentary of Shaykh Uthaymeen, may Allah have mercy on him, that's one that's recently or was published and beneficial and easy to understand. That's one of the best ones. Right? And he mentioned, is there, in any case, if you read just the index, Shaykh says, of Riyadh Salihin, you'll get the benefits. You read the contents alone, chapter by chapter, you see how beneficial it is. So Sharh Riyadh Salihin Mu'thaymin, it's all in English. All 6 volumes, Darul Salam, green print. So I recommend people they buy it, have in their home. If you read that book, you will learn about life. Forget about fiqh and about aqidah. You learn everything in life. Shaykh Uthaymeen gives advice on life in there. So it is a book. If you read it, you'll benefit. All kinds of benefits. And it's, even if you see how the Shaykh explains it, and he used to also explain it in the masjid, you'll benefit, and he'll bring the contemporary matters that me and you need in our time. So that's why it's one of the best. Another notable mention is the Sharh Shaykh Salim Hilali. It's also I think it's called Bahaj al-Nadirin. That one is very good too, because the way he organized the benefits and also the way he pulls the benefits. Shaykh Salim Hilali, you'll find a great benefit, great use. So Riyadh Salihin, everyone should have it in their homes, and I think most of us have it, but get the commentary. And if you want to do simple, ask what's a good book to read the family. That's a good book, because you're going to learn aqeed in there, tawheed in there, fiqh in there, akhlaq in there, adab in there. Shaykh criticizes people's behavior, parking in there. Shaykh tells some people park wrong. And he mentioned the benefit. Right? What hadith is it? Right? What we're going to get from that? What about the other an tariq? Some people putting harm in the street, some people parking in front of the masjid. He says, what is this? In that book. So when you read that book, even if you're going to learn so many things about yourself. In fact, if someone just read it, you will see, subhanAllah, the basic hadith we all know, but we didn't apply it because we didn't understand maybe the way it's expanded. He even talks about some of the benefits to do with akhlaq when dealing with others, differing. So it's a really good book. I really encourage people to read it and return to it often. You'll find a lot of benefits, especially when you want to learn more about different topics. So that's a very good one. And he says that in any case, if each one of us dedicates each time, each day to read chapters from this book, Riyadh Salihin, we'll find that we're gain a lot of benefit. And the problem is that we disregard certain books while eagerly pursuing others, whose benefit may not even reach the tenth of what is found in the comprehensive works, which compile, like Riyadh Salihin, which compiles many of the chapters of religion, including the beginning chapters and relevant chapters of the Quran, followed by sayings of the Sahih Rasul Sallallahu, and the hadith have been authenticated by Shaykh Al-Albani as well. And he included in it some hadiths that are considered unreliable according to his own judgment. And following this book and hadith, so that's the Shaykh's advice, that generally that book is a comprehensive book, and that's the benefit. And if someone tries to memorize it even, then becomes even higher level, right? We become very knowledgeable person. Until that, some of the ulama, they recommend if someone use that book, Riyadh Salihin is a book for khutbahs, and it's a book also for mawa'id, when you give wa'ad, advice, and you want to give a talk, you go for that book. Right? So some ulama say that there's a list of the resources for the khatib. This is one of them. Right? So tomorrow, if you say next week you're going to do khutbah, you just go to Riyadh Salihin, you get the hadith, you get the sharh, bismillah, you can get the khutbah. Because it has fadail. So that's why when we have these books, we can also encourage people about the fadail, also nawahi, the good part of the book. The second half is prohibitions. Unlike the tablighi book, it only has the fadail. We have both. You have both. And that's why it's good, because the other part you have to know what are the prohibitions. So he tells you here are the prohibitions, and he has all these benefits. So highly recommended to read. He says next on the topic of hadith, في المصطلح الحديث, the Shaykh recommends the Mustalah al-Hadith of Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, which was something studied in the Ma'had Ilmi, the Knowledge Institute, where the Shaykh used to teach. And he says that it's a concise style. Some must belittle academic studies and discourage others from using them. And he says this stems from two issues, either laziness or ignorance. So it's a muqarrar, it's a curriculum text. So Shaykh Uthaymeen used to work in the Jami' al-Qasim for many, many years, I think something like 40 years or something, along with being a sheikh. So in there he has certain efforts that are unique, like he wrote curriculums. So some of the stuff he writes, my fiqh books, summaries of hadith, inheritance books for the students, for the secondary and the university level. So this book, Mustalah Hadith, is like a muqarrar, like a curriculum for them. So the Shaykh saying some people think it's not beneficial because not like a classical book, it's an academic book. But he says that some people, they have criticism, but it comes from two places, laziness or ignorance, because those curricula are not derived from other than the Quran. They're not coming from Torah and Injil, they come from the Quran and Sunnah. So those who study in Islamic colleges or institutes will remember that we studied the scientific subjects and topics or ilmi knowledge-based topics, and one regrets not reviewing them. Means even in Medina or any school, they bring you a curriculum, the Shaykh writes, he's summarizing many topics for you. So that's a benefit. And if one were to examine the notes when he used to study in one of those institutes, you would find that he, a lot of astonishing facts, given our lack of interest in some of the studies. And therefore, some people say that these study circles are a true form of learning, means going to halaqat, and this is the truth, no doubt. However, students also used to go to institutes and schools and colleges every morning, except Thursday and Friday, to seek knowledge for nearly 6 hours a day. Where has that knowledge gone? Right? And where is the blessings? Right? Where is its blessings? Is removed from the hearts of the people. So anyway, in any case, we can find that the Shaykh's point is there. Right? These curriculums are wasila, but halaqat al-ilm and durus al-masjid, that's the asl. Right? And maybe we'll mention later, Qadir Baghdadi mentioned that in Jami' Akhlaq وآداب السامع, جامع خلق الراوي وآداب السامع, he mentioned that the halaqat al-ilm and durus al-hadith, they happen in the masajid. And that's the origin. But if you say we're going to do it in an institute and we're going to study, it's not like it's wrong. It's just a wasila. But it's true, the one in the masjid is mubarakah. That one we have to agree, the one in the masjid, because that one you're not coming out of force. You're coming out of your heart, right? Desire to learn and get closer to Allah. But coming back to the point, the Shaykh says that the terminology in the hadith book, this book, is prescribed for a second year secondary student. So the Shaykh's book, Mustalah Hadith, for the second year student, the secondary level. So a talib, for الطلاب who are the ثانوية بالمعاهد علمية, so second year of the high school level. And there's a comprehensive book that beginners can easily understand, given the ease of Shaykh's style, and deliberately choose a level suitable for beginners. And that's a bit of Shaykh Uthaymeen. He will change the curriculum based on the level of the student. So if it's a beginner level, so easy. If it's a higher level, it gets more advanced. If it's a student, like a student university level, it goes more deep. And you can see it. Some of his, for example, his sharh of Wasatiyya for beginners, very summarized. Then his big one in the masjid, 2 volumes, long. If you see, for example, we were studying inheritance on Fridays, you see he has a Talkhis Fiqh and Fara'id, that's for the secondary school. Then he has Tasheel Fara'id, then Sharh Mumti'an. He has that one there. When he does Sharh Mumti'an there, he goes deep. So the level, Shaykh Uthaymeen specials at those levels, you cannot take it for granted. So sometimes what happens, like if you read the small one, you're going to find out what Shaykh's going to say at the end too. But the benefit is you got there quicker because you understand the maqsood and the overall intent of the subject. So I would highly recommend as well reading those books, and don't be like some people who say, oh, we have to read the classical ones only. Hey, if you don't read the beginner, contemporary ones, what's the likelihood you got to read the classical books? Right? Shaykh's going to have a second chapter next week, he talks about the classical books. But see how the Shaykh started all with contemporary books? And that's also a benefit. You start with the easy stuff, then you go up. So some people say we have to go to the books of Salaf. But you won't understand what they're saying unless you have the basic tools. And then to finish, just the last parts here, he says on top of that, added to that, Manzuma al-Bayquniyya, if someone memorizes it or learns it, Hassan, he says, very good, due to it being a poetry which is easy to memorize, and people benefit from poetry, some people like it more. So many of us, we study that, we memorize it, and Shaykh Uthaymeen has a sharh as well. And that's usually what most will begin, Sharh Manzuma al-Bayquniyya. Number 9, he says, الأصول من علم الأصول. In أصول الفقه, مثل ما شيخ عثيمين, again, المقرر في معاهد العلمية على طلاب السنة الثالثة في مرحلة الثانوية. So this is 30 level high school students. They read this book, الأصول من علم الأصول. Today it's become مقرر everywhere in the world. Until some ulama, they mentioned this is one of the best books in the أصول الفقه for a beginner. الأصول من علم الأصول is proof Shaykh Uthaymeen was أصولي. Because in that book, he summarized the topic so easy. But really, it's not that easy. It's not like a simple summary. It's a good summary because you go back to, you understand properly what he said. The words he chose are very small, simple, but very strong. Because if Shaykh Uthaymeen has many books on Usul al-Fiqh, but he says here, this book, the Shaykhs adopt a simple style. You can easy for anyone to understand. And he has a sharh too, Sharh Usul min Ilm Usul. And Shaykh has a lot of shuruhat and books on Usul al-Fiqh, but this is one of the best of them. And the benefit of Shaykh Uthaymeen's book, Salafi. So this is the first from the books of maybe what you say in a long time, or someone wrote a book on Usul al-Fiqh from Salafi perspective. Otherwise, it was dominated with the Ash'ari views and Mu'tazila and Al-Kalam. And it's something everyone knows who studies it. Even old Nadir has some parts in the Muqaddim was taken out because it was from the Mantiq of Ghazali and later on. But even Shaykh Shinqiti, Sharh and Rawdah, you could say Ibn Uthaymeen's one is the purest of them, in the sense that it's just purely, there's no mistakes whatsoever or any potential misinterpretations. And that's one of the benefits as well you would know if you're studying the subjects. That's a very good one. It's English also, it's in English. Anyone who wants it. Then the Shaykh finishes this point, and we have to probably finish with this, although there's a little more we can read it all. Number 10, books of Fatawa. And he says then, this means the Fatawa of the ulama like Shaykh ibn Baz, Rahimahullah, ibn Uthaymeen, Shaykh ibn Jibreen, Shaykh Fawzan. And I don't say this to be exclusive, but I mentioned these four specifically because the Fatawa are amongst the best sources of student knowledge to begin with. And if you wish to solidify the Fatawa in your mind, read the question, then wait and do not answer until you recall what Allah has taught you. And strive to provide the answer based on your own knowledge. If you make a mistake, then there's no sin on you. So now the Shaykh is teaching how to read Fatawa. So the ulama, we know the books of Fatawa are very good. What are they good for? To know the answers to questions, especially common questions, and sometimes the new issues. So some ulama, they say for a student of knowledge, even if he doesn't know, for example, the details for why the answer was given, he should know the base fatwa, especially the new issues. So it's not enough, for example, if you're studying and someone says, what's the rule on cryptocurrency? You can't say, Allahu A'lam. What do you mean, Allahu A'lam? You're the one, you're talib ilm, you're supposed to know. So you should either say, okay, maybe it's haram, maybe it's makruh. At least you say, okay, there's 4 opinions or 3. Have some summary. Why? Because at least I can tell someone there's different views, here they are. I wouldn't advise it because that's it. So the benefit of knowing the fatwa, at least you know a base ruling. I'm not walking with nothing. Because sometimes what happens is some of the questions will ask you, you read the fatwa and you know the exact answer. At least if I don't know the fatwa, the dillah, at least I know the ruling. Shaykh Atimi says not allowed, someone says not allowed. But Shaykh says, how do you train yourself? First you read the fatwa and don't look at the answer. Then you answer yourself, then you check the fatwa. See if you got it right. That's in tadreeb, in practice. And why is that beneficial? Because if you study the mas'ala properly, you should be able to answer it the right way. And if you study the books he's talking about, it'll also allow you to be able to have the ability to understand. And that's a great benefit that we encourage. And there's many books, even in English. Fatawa Legends Da'ima or in English. Fatawa Islamiyya. That's a very famous one in English, about 10 volumes I think it was. The brown cover, it's very popular. So you can read them, all of the Fatawa. And reading them is beneficial. But you don't do fiqh from there. Okay, some people, that's talab ilm is the fatwa. Some of us, that's what we do, right? We learn that the ilm like that, read fatwa and we learn from there. Then you read another fatwa, you got confused. Then someone asked you, you passed the third fatwa. Right? So you read 2 fatwas, then you gave your third one. So what happens, because if you're learning with the fatwas, you're not learning. What you're doing is you're getting the answers. What you should do is seek knowledge and read fatwas. See the difference? So sometimes what you notice, the lay person, different. His way, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرٍ كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. That's his ilm. That's his talab ilm. You just ask, he gets it. Like when I come back, he asks. Talab ilm, he should not be like reading the fatwas online, confusing himself. And also what we notice is sometimes when you tell people, why don't you just try to do both? They may say that, well, the fatwa, I just need the answer. But will you appreciate the answer if you never know how you got there? How are you going to remember? How are you going to remember the answer if you don't even know how to reach it? That also happens, right? You learn the answer, you forgot it. You check it again, you forget it. The same question you asked 10 times. So what you're going to do is, even if you're studying something, try to figure out, okay, what was the proof? How did they reach it? And how can I remember this in an easy way? So some ulama, they even they did summary of some of the fatawa. And the Shaykh has more speech, but due to the time, we'll stop with this much. And that's a great advice the Shaykh's given about the books. Next week, inshallah, we'll continue. And the Shaykh talks about then reading the books of Salaf. Now, to go to the next level, engaging with the works of the Salaf, the pious predecessors. Anyone have any quick questions? Otherwise, yes.
Someone says, I repeated the book like 7 times. What is sufficient understanding and memorization to be able to say, I learned this book enough to move on to the next?
So the brother's asking, reading books multiple times, so what is sufficient to say you finished? If you understand it. It means you understand the contents, you can explain it easily, any parts of the book, or you memorize, at least if you memorize the book, for example, it's a poem or something, you memorized it. Or at least if someone asks you something, you can break down the mas'ala, you know the proof for it, you know how it was reached. So you have the constant ability to teach it to somebody else. If they ask you to, you could do it. So that means that's sufficient. But sometimes what happens, you review it to remember, but if someone read it multiple times, usually it's because they didn't understand it properly the first time or second time. So that's why you keep reading until you say, okay, I think I'm sufficient to understand it and I can teach others, or someone can test me and I should be able to understand it. But that's why you try your best. Some say, ulama say, read one time properly, and some they like to prefer the method, read it one time just to know what's in it, and a second time to to get more into depth, and third time you try to master it. There's different ways, and we're going to get to that as well. What is the preferred method of reading books, one or twice or thrice? Yes, brother. So that's the thing. Can you read the Sharh Bayquni Uthaymin instead of the Mustalah? Yes, you can. Because they're the same topic. It's a little bit more advanced, the Bayquni one, but it's not too much. So you can do that. Because they're both the same level. They're both beginner. Right? They're both beginner. But he has one that's higher than that after. But those both are in the same category. So last one, brother, yes. Okay, so that's a good question. Which books are to be read and which to be studied? So inshallah, we're going to get to that later, because there are some books that the ulama, they mentioned to read, and some of them you have to study it. And then some of them they have a commentary, and some they don't have a commentary, because they're not meant for that. So maybe